So I think we should talk, even if only briefly, about Swift 6.1, which came out, which is the good news. And the reason I think we should talk about it, we won't go into an enormous amount of detail here, but the reason I think we should talk about it is because we have hit a couple of snags with Swift 6.1, and the rollout of the new version is in a kind of limbo status at the moment, where we have been allowing Swift 6.1 packages into the package list, which gets them into the index. But then for a little while, the actual package index wasn't picking them up because it couldn't analyze them. And we're now in a situation where the package index is picking them up and will analyze them and show the package page, but you won't see compatibility results for 6.1 yet. So you'll see more packages than normal are showing no compatible versions, because there are actually quite a significant number of 6.1 packages already. And in fact, I think two of my the packages I'm going to talk about later in the show are 6.1 packages, and yet they show zero compatibility because we just haven't managed to roll out the compatibility testing. So we're in this kind of limbo status, which is unusual for us. We usually deploy the whole thing all at once and kind of get it all rolled out smoothly, but that has not quite gone to plan this with this version, has it, Sven?
No, the rollout hasn't been rolling, really. It's normally, I mean, it is a bit of a multi-step process. We have like a checklist that we go through, and I think it has like 30 steps, which not all of the steps are like a huge thing. It's more like, do this little thing and then this little thing and some a bit bigger things as well. The problem is we very early on hit a quite big roadblocker that even made the whole server process not run on Swift 6.1, which was a big issue we needed to fix.
Yeah.
But you said actually something really encouraging there, because I hadn't realized that we have at least gotten the server to process the 6.1 packages now. That is a fact, right? You're confirming that, because I hadn't even realized that. I was so focused getting the build system.
I am confirming that.
Oh, fantastic!
Yes.
That's great news. And now that I think about it, yeah, of course, that's the thing we merged late last week. But that's only one of the steps. So normally all of this happens in.
That's right.
In like literally, it takes half a day to get all of this done. This time, I think it's been a week since we started working on it, and I was trying to find workarounds for that initial problem on the server. And you can see as the thing comes alive bit by bit over the course of a week.
Yes.
What's normally hours, and you don't see any of it.
So the good news is 6.1 is coming. Well, at least our support for 6.1 is coming, but it is not quite there yet in terms of the compatibility results. So hold tight just for another few days, or maybe a little longer than that. I won't give any firm date when it will be fixed.
Well, by the next time we record, it'll definitely be there. That's 3 weeks away. I'm going to go out on a limb and commit myself to getting the build system up and running by then, and it really should be there by the end of this week. So by the time you hear this, it might actually be working. Fingers crossed.
There's confidence for you. There's confidence.
There's another bit of news I saw coming up on the Swift forums. I think it was last week. And that's the announcement of a Swift fundraising cooperative by Diana Ma. We talked about something like this before. Now we've open source funding has been like a frequent topic on the podcast.
We did, yeah.
And it was nice to see that. There's a post. It talks a bit on why it's needed, which echoes what we've mentioned before. And it explains what the Swift Fundraising Cooperative wants to be doing, like being an intermediary between sponsors and open source developers. There are 3 chairs to the cooperative at the moment. That's Diana herself, Fina Golfin, it's just the username. I'm not sure who that actually is, but I know the name. I think the person is mainly involved with Android, if I recall correctly, like Android support in Swift.
Yes.
And Tyler Furby. And there's a little bit more about the people in the announcement post. Give it a read. It wasn't entirely clear to me reading the post how it's supposed to work, but maybe that's just one of the first steps to sort of figure out how this could work. I think the main call to action here is to get involved, make yourself known if you have funding available that you'd like to put into projects, and I suppose the cooperative would be able to help connect you with people who are willing or able to do the work for things like that. And it's definitely the project, a nice effort. It's great to see this happening, and hopefully it'll help get some work funded around the Swift open source community.
Yeah, I mean, I think the basic point of it is that it is supposed to bring contributors or potential contributors together with companies or people who want to fund work within Swift open source projects. So there's a couple of examples in the post here. So, for example, features with niche constituencies that don't fit into a big vision currently being spearheaded by the core team might be a good fit for something that might be funded by this, or middle ring infrastructure that is not universally foundational, but also not specific enough to a single company's business for them to justify developing internally from scratch. So that's the kind of thing they're targeting with this document. But I think what it needs is a firmer explanation of how the whole thing will work. How do companies apply? How do contributors apply? Again, at the moment, I think it is just a call for interest, and so the forum post is the place that you would do that, and we'll include a link to that forum post in the show notes.
And the other bit of interesting news I saw fly by via a link on Mastodon is it's not a pure new project itself. I think it is an update to the project, and it is swiftregex.com by Kashikawa Katsumi. I believe you mentioned you've also linked to the project in the past. It's not really new. This is a website that helps you write and debug regex regular expressions, and specifically ones that use Swift. It was 2-3 years ago that the regex builder syntax was introduced.
2022. Yeah.
And what that is like you normally write regex expressions with all these weird punctuation stuff, backslashes, /d for a digit, and whatnot. It's a sort of thing that looks completely unintelligible and then does magic and matches stuff. And as opposed to that, Swift comes with this regex builder syntax where you sort of have a more spelled out form of what you're trying to match, and what your expectations are, and it looks entirely different. But what this site does, or in general even Swift can do itself by rewriting a regex in this builder syntax, is so on the website it also does that. If you plug in a regex, it can actually expand that to the builder syntax for you to then copy out, for instance. It also has a little text box where you can paste in some sample text, and it'll show you if it matches, and if there are matches, what parts are being matched. Which is, there sites like that exist, and the particularly interesting piece here is the connection to Swift specifically. But what it also now has is and that's the new thing that was announced, is a debugger. And what this allows you to do is actually run the step through the matching process, and it shows you where it's at in the string that it's matching, where sort of the regex cursor, if you will, what is it currently looking at in terms of The next thing is trying to match, and which part has it matched already. I think it might even show you like look back and look ahead if stuff like that is in your regex. It's really interesting. Like I love what Kashikawa is doing with these sites. There's another one, the Swift Asset Explorer, which we've mentioned in the past.
There's also swiftfiddle.com is Kishikawa's as well, which is also great.
Oh, right. Yeah. He has these great sites where you can explore Swift in really unusual ways. And I really love this. I love the debugger that you can sort of see how it's actually being parsed. It's not something I don't think I've never seen a tool that would actually allow you to do that. So that's
it. I was just about to say that I've never seen a regex debugger like this, and it is if for nothing other than curiosity, you should go and check it out for that. But these regex builders and testers have been a very useful set of tools for a long time. And while most regexes do kind of work well between different languages and different implementations, there's nothing better than having the regex be parsed by the actual regex parser that you will be using in your code. So I think there's a couple of really great reasons to use this one over anything else that you have been using so far. And like you say, Kashikawa has contributed so much to the community that it's definitely worth giving this another mention, even if we have talked about it before.
Yeah. And I love how he actually extends it beyond what the initial capabilities are. Like I mentioned, like Swift has the capability to convert a regex into a builder syntax, but he keeps this side by side, so you can actually, I think it might even highlight the parts that you're looking at, that you're highlighting on one side and the other. It's certainly what his other tool does, like the Swift Asset Explorer. He's using the web to give you more dynamic views of your code, and I absolutely love that. It's really, really amazing stuff.
It is absolutely fantastic. While we're talking about his projects, actually, there was another one which is I think it's a little bit older now. It's 2020, but I was just looking through the old archives of iOS Dev Weekly to see where I'd mentioned his projects before, and there was one that I'd forgotten about, which was it was called SourceKit for Safari, where if you it was a browser extension, or it may still work, but it was a browser extension for Safari and Chrome that will silently clone a GitHub repository locally and run SourceKit LSP against it to provide you quick help and navigation through the project source in place on the GitHub page, which I think is a great idea.
That's amazing.
So yes, his projects are fantastic, all of them. You should follow him on whichever social media you use, and also keep an eye on his webpage, which again we'll pop a link to his webpage into the show notes so that you can find all his projects.
That's by him as well, the Safari extension.
It is,
right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
nice. You can see the journey, right? He started doing that, and then he's.
You can see that there was a bug planted in his brain, and it has fueled the last 5 years of his experimentations.
That's amazing.
Well, that's great.
I think that's it for news this week, isn't it?
Then it's package time already. Quicker than usual, but that's okay. I promised in our last episode that we would be on time, and we are on time, but it turns out that if we're on time...
See, that's why we usually leave some gaps. Yeah.
You see, it's all part of the master plan. That's it, yeah. Well, I will kick us off this week with a package that is not only useful, but has a fantastic, hilarious README file. So the package is by Southkin, and it is called Has Lazy Server. And the package name doesn't really describe adequately what the package does, but I do like the little kind of tagline that the package has, which is coping tools for gaslighting Jason. Okay. So basically what this package does is it says that in the real world of working with somebody else's JSON API, sometimes documentation and definitions for a JSON API lie. They might.
No way.
Actually, there's a really nice. Yes, it's true. It's true. They might lie. I quite like the description that is from the README, and if nothing else, you should read this README. It's very amusingly written, the whole thing. But it says sometimes it's a number, sometimes it's a string, sometimes it's null, sometimes it's a whole object pretending to be a number, and the API documentation, it swears that it's always going to be an int. So what this does is it basically allows you to consume information that might be several different types. If you're not in control of the API, you may need to revert back to a package like this. So you can say, give me the item data as a double or as an int, and they return optionals that if they can be passed into that format, they return one. So you could actually take an int and pass it as a double if you would prefer to. That's a fairly simple case, but also sometimes it could deal with that as a string, or it could deal with that as a sometime array, which again, fantastic type name. So it says sometimes you get one, sometimes many, sometime array remembers which it was and gives you as array when you just want to move on. So it's basically a nice little toolkit for dealing with very badly defined JSON APIs. And I hope that your life doesn't include any of these APIs, but I'm sure that some of you at least have to.
That sounds great. I got to check that out. To be honest, the name did not give that away as the package's purpose.
No, it didn't. I would echo that feedback that if you want a more descriptive name or a better name for it, it wouldn't go amiss.
My first pick this week is a package I got a little overexcited about. I submitted it to the index in a hurry earlier today, actually, because I saw a Swift forum announcement about Swift Playground and Swift Playground for the command line in particular. Yeah, I only after I'd submitted the package and merged it, I saw there's actually -experimental as part of the package name, and the whole thing is announced to be experimental. But I thought, well, it's in the index now, so we can talk about it because it's in the index, and it might still be interesting and useful.
I spotted this one too and decided not to add it to my list because it did feel like a little bit early. But I think the concept, which I'm sure you'll tell us about in a second, I think the concept is very interesting.
Yeah. So the concept is actually quite simple. It introduces a macro, pound playground, that you can attach to a code snippet, or you can surround a code snippet with. Effectively, what that does, you give it a name like pound playground and then a name, and that sort of defines as that snippet as a playground. And then there's, as part of that whole prototype, comes a prototype version of Swift PM as well, which you can use to play these snippets. And the way you do that is just type Swift play and then the name of the snippet. And what that does is it'll compile the snippet, and the snippet has access to all your private declarations in that file. So you can really make that a thing that tries out something that's very deeply tied to your implementation. And it'll run the snippet on the command line. And it'll stay running. So you can, if you have a function, for instance, the example is there's a Fibonacci sequence, and there's just a for loop that prints out some sequence members, and you can have that open in your editor and then edit the code. It'll just keep compiling and running the snippet. It's really like a terminal-based playground environment, like we're used to with Swift Playgrounds in both Xcode and in the Playgrounds app. So this looks to be like a thing made to give you more ways of exploring code and playing around with code, a bit like Playgrounds and also like previews. I found that really interesting.
And I don't know whether you mentioned this or not, but this is an official Apple project, right?
It is, yeah. I'm not sure. I suppose the person is, the person is part of the Xcode team. And the project actually lives in the Apple organization on GitHub.
Yeah, I spotted that when it flew past, because from the README you might not guess that immediately. And of course, us talking about it here and the fact that it's submitted to the package index and the fact that it's on that Apple account doesn't mean anything's going to appear in Xcode or anything like that. Just to keep people's expectations in check. But I think it's interesting that they're playing with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose it might also at some point tie into the snippets feature, which is, I think, pretty niche still. I've never used snippets. So snippets,
right,
in that context is around documentation, right? You declare documentation snippets that are executed. Remind me, actually, now that I start talking about it, I realize that I don't even remember the feature exactly how it works.
Yeah, it's very... So snippets is a feature that I think is slightly underused, and I think partly it's because it's not entirely clear the best way to use them. But yes, snippets can be embedded in Doc.C documentation, and then I believe that at the very least they can be compiled and tested to I think the purpose of them originally was to make sure that the snippets in your documentation are correct because they can compile. Yeah. But I think there's the potential for this kind of playgrounds idea and snippets and maybe other things around this area to be combined into something which might become quite exciting. It's always interesting to see the packages that Apple are making open source. They're not always immediately ready for use, but it shows some of the things they're thinking about on the Swift team and the Xcode team without being yet actually in a shipping product or anything like that.
Yeah, I suppose we might hear about that in the very near future, but it's certainly an interesting thing to pop up.
Is there a conference coming up? I wasn't aware. Well, I'm sorry if we ruined an announcement at the conference by finding that package. But I'm sure. Well, that's the thing, though. I'm sure there it's not a ruin of an announcement, because they wouldn't have made it open source if it was.
We shall see. Only how much is it? 5 weeks? Yeah, 5-6 weeks, and there we are. Okay,
my next package is called Text Replacements by Daniel Seide. And this is a solution to the eternal problem of creating attributed strings, which have always been kind of ugly to create in code. And a huge step forward for creating attributed strings came, I think, either last year or maybe the year before, which was the fact that that UIKit and SwiftUI can both now parse Markdown and give you back a processed string from some Markdown. But what that doesn't cover is things like adding color to text or things like that. So Text Replacements is a library that will take a string, whether that string has come from Markdown or not, it doesn't matter. So you can parse Markdown and then add text replacements on the end of it, and what it allows you to do is search for text within a string, and then for every match of the text that you find, you can do different formatting tasks using a very similar syntax to SwiftUI with its view modifiers. So, for example, the example in the README says that has a string that says text replacements is a SwiftUI library that blah 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 blah. Right? It has this string, and then in the replacements it says text replacements. So it's finding that first instance of the word text replacements, and then saying dot font is title, dot font weight is black, dot font design is rounded, and dot foreground color is green. So it's a much more concise and controllable way to apply those attributes, and it will find every occurrence of that string within your original string. So it's a really nice way that if you're looking for something to highlight in some text in your application, a really nice API to kind of make that happen. Not something you're going to use every day, but this is a problem that has been around for long enough that many people have tried to solve it, and I quite like this implementation.
Nice. Yeah, I suppose it also makes it nicer to actually like work with a full string, right? Because I often find it's hard to spot like typos or word omissions when stuff is broken up by, like formatting code. Like imagine you had to put this inside the code,
right?
This bit is this, and then it's really hard to just miss something because you can't search for the full, where is this full string used in the application, because you wouldn't match it obviously because the full string is broken up by other bits. So that might be also an interesting aspect of it.
And the other reason you should go and check this out is because there's a couple of bounties in the README file. This package will be documented once it gets more than 100 stars on GitHub. So if you'd like documentation for this package, then go and give it a star.
Here we go. Maybe we can contribute a bit to the influx of stars.
In fact, there we go. I'm gonna live on the podcast. I am going to star it right now. There you go. It's done.
How many does it have right now? How close are we?
It has 53. So with only a small effort from the audience here, we could get this package documented.
Fantastic. Okay, my second pick is called Swift Snapshot Testing Macros by Adam Carter, and that's yet another package that's making use of macros, and really, I think, drives home how great a feature they are and they can be. I'm obviously referring to the previous package, which also used the Swift Play Experimental was also using macros, and they're just a great tool, and they open up so many use cases that we didn't really see before. What I particularly like here is that it also takes another new feature, which is Swift testing, that came out with Swift 6.0, so it's just half a year old or in production, and it's using Swift testing in combination with Point3Co's Swift snapshot testing library that I think we've talked about in the past before, and is giving you these two. It's sort of tying these together and giving you a couple of macros that make it really, really easy to get a snapshot test up and running, and in particular a Swift UI based snapshot test. So all you need to do is annotate your test suite with snapshot suite, like add snapshot suite, and your test function with add snapshot test. And then your function, all it needs to do is return a Swift UI view, and the macro will take care of all the rest, capturing the view. I'm pretty sure there are modifiers on the snapshot test thing where you can specify what you want, like screen sizes and, dark, light, theming and all that. I'm pretty sure there's all sorts of attributes you can set, but the very basic thing is like super simple. You return a view from your test function, and the macro will capture the view, render it to a file, persist the file, and then if there are differences, highlight the differences. And that's obviously the snapshotting is what the Swift snapshot testing library brings, and all the machinery around it, the test instrumentation, is what Swift testing brings. It allows you, it actually makes that macro now possible to write, being able to wrap all this up in such simple mechanics for you as a user. I think that's really great. I was very excited when Swift testing was announced that it might sort of spur on a whole swath of new testing tools that make things easier, and I'm really delighted to see this sort of stuff happening now. It's a bit of a bummer that macros are sort of come with the burden of the long compile times, but I think we might see some improvement there very soon. I've seen that there's a patch being sort of hinted at, where you won't need to recompile the Swift macros. It'll ship with a toolchain, a binary version of it, and then like macros are there all the way. You know, you won't pay a price for using them, and you'll be able to just enjoy them.
I think we even talked about that last episode, the potential of that joining, not being such a detriment to Swift macros anymore. And you're absolutely right about this package. I also saw this package. In fact, I linked to this package in Friday's iOS Dev Weekly, because it is just a great step forward for snapshot testing. So simple to use, like really, really simple to use.
And in general, like snapshot testing, I think is very underused. I don't see it mentioned often. I think that's a lot due to tooling. Like tooling around snapshot testing hasn't been great on iOS or on Apple platforms in general. I remember a long time ago in the project, we started doing it with Cucumber and all sorts of stuff like that, but it was always very difficult to get this set up, like UI testing in general and then snapshot testing as a variant of it. But it's become a lot easier. And I think another thing people often don't realize, you can snapshot and snapshot test all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be a view. It doesn't have to be UI.
Yeah, I was gonna mention this actually, because it was actually your tests, some of the tests that you wrote in Swift Package Index, that I hadn't even considered that you could use it for anything else other than images or visual stuff. But in the test, I think we snapshot SQL queries. I think we snapshot bits of JSON. I think we snapshot bits of text to make sure that the text that we expect is the text that gets rendered, and all sorts of stuff. Anything that can be any string basically, plus or any image.
Yeah. What I really love about it is that this test setup is super simple. You pay a bit of a price when the underlying expectations change. Like it can be really tedious if you get a huge JSON thing to verify that it's what you expect, right? If you actually need to decode it and then drill into a struct or something and look at individual fields. And if you want to look at all of the fields, it's like you're typing a lot of code to test every bit. And then if something changes, you need to go in again. Whereas the snapshot test is really simple to set up, right? You capture the thing once, and then on change, all you need to do is verify the diff, right? You see something changed in the JSON that I'm seeing, and then you only need to confirm, well, is this new expectation correct? And then you just save the new snapshot. Or if it isn't correct, then you obviously need to make changes, but then it's a failure like any other failure, right? It's just a different way of highlighting your problem, and a different way of sort of rebaselining your expectations, which is something that takes a bit of getting used to. But I find as a dev process, it's actually a really nice shortcut to save you a lot of time on writing your expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. My last package is a very small package that's not going to take us a long time to talk about, but it's something I really like. Whenever, I don't know whether you're aware, but the Associated Press have a title case style. So if you're capitalizing words in a sentence, let's say for a headline, you shouldn't capitalize all the words. You should only capitalize some of the words. Like, for example, you shouldn't capitalize the, or an, or there are various rules. There's about 5 or 6 different rules, and somebody has coded those rules into a Swift title case package, and the person who did it is Yilai Yang, and so you can pass it a string, and it will pass you back a title-cased version of that string. So if you're, for example, writing your blog in Swift, or if you're writing some kind of server-side Swift that produces a website, this is the kind of thing that might come in useful if you're preparing titles or headlines or something like that in your products. There are a couple of, there's actually just one caveat to it, which is it says that it tries its best to title case them, because there are some. There's one subtle rule in there, which is that if the word up is used as an adverb rather than a preposition, it should be title case, whereas this is the simple case, and it just lowercase is up in all instances. So it's not perfect, but it's something that might be useful if you're writing that kind of software, and it's just something I care about myself as well. So I've always tried to do it right in everything that I write, but I've never corrected other people's headlines when I link to stuff in iOS Dev Weekly. So whenever you see a title there that is not title case, that's because it matches whatever was written on the original website. The only other thing I'd say here is that this is one of the packages that I mentioned that requires Swift 6.1, except I'm sure it doesn't actually require Swift 6.1. So I would imagine the tools version of 6.1 could be put back a few versions. I mean, I have no idea how the internals of this package work, but I'm fairly confident that it doesn't require 6.1.
Yeah, I suspect it's the default, right? If you create a new package, you get the latest tool version.
Exactly. That's exactly why it's happened.
I wonder if that's perhaps I don't know. On the other hand, why not, right? It's just something people need to be a bit mindful of when they create their package, that it'll do that. Interesting. Nice package.
It's also fallen into the trap of using the word Swift in the package title. Swift title case is the package, whereas it could have quite happily been called title case. but that's just a little pet peeve about all. I still don't understand why most Swift packages have the word Swift on them.
Don't get me started. I mean, I'm just looking at my package recommendations. All of them have Swift dash. Why are we doing this? Why? It's
ludicrous, is what it is. It's ludicrous. And we're going to end up with a package ecosystem that has Swift on the beginning of every... Because Apple is very entrenched in doing this. So every package that Apple produce, or almost every package, has the word Swift. And people look to Apple for guidelines of how to do it. And so it's infecting the entire ecosystem. And I know the last time we brought this up, that there were a couple of people who I think on social media came up with the reason for it. But I still don't really understand the reason for it. And if after having it explained, I still don't understand the reason for it, I'm not sure it's a great rule.
Yeah, what is it like, because on GitHub you can then tell at a glance what language
I wish I could remember. I wish I could remember what the explanation was, but it didn't stick with me long enough for it to actually make sense. Yeah,
it's a shame. I always look in my sidebar, and I think that it's not the first time I mentioned this. Like, if you look at your Xcode sidebar, the dependencies, it's like, it's Swift dash, and then the tail end is cut off because I don't have it set super wide. It's just, I think, why?
Yeah.
Anyway. We're not going to change that.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. No. Although if we mention it often enough, then maybe.
Maybe we annoy the right people if they happen to hear it.
Exactly. Yeah. So with that, we shall bring this episode to an end, and say that we will again be back in 3 weeks' time, and maybe we'll have a little more news to talk about then. Maybe we won't. But until then, we will speak to you next time.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.